Off the ball. This is News Talk.
You're welcome, Max. We're going to turn to some of the weekend's GAA now. In particular, the game at Austin Stack Park. Dublin, 11 points to Kerry's 115 down in Tralee. Billy Joe Padden is with us on the line. Hi, Billy Joe.
Good evening, Joe.
So, loads to get into here. I would think 20 minutes into this game, with Kerry leading by 6 points to 4 with a gale force wind, Dublin and Dessie Farrell would have said, well, this is not so bad. And suddenly by half-time, the margin was 13 points.
Yeah, they made a pretty good start and they were well in the game. They seemed to be moving the ball very well. Of course, there was a turning point there as you go into the second quarter of the game. The fact that the goal that was disallowed, the subsequent then black card, and Scully, who had been particularly busy in that open period getting on the ball, and he is a good player. He's a real good link player for Dublin and a very important player in terms of the way they keep possession, and that's always going to be even more important when you're playing against a wind like that, against a team that wants to play direct football. But really then once they took those couple of blows and knockbacks, the way they reacted in the second quarter was so unlike anything we've seen from Dublin in the past, and was really what cost them the game. And in many ways, that's the surprising thing, and that's the most alarming thing for me to come out of the game.
How so? What was it in the reaction?
Dublin's reaction, I think it was just the lack of physicality in that second quarter. Dublin needed their big players to have an impact, and that starts in those situations, in bad conditions, against a breeze. It starts in the middle of the field, and to me that starts with Fenton. You have to be aggressive and you have to win the ball. You have to get your team up the field, and he didn't do that, and they didn't do that. Enough of those big players didn't stand up. Kilkenny as well in that situation, and I think that to lead from the front and to bring some of those more inexperienced players along, he needed to show that leadership in that period, and he was unable to do so.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting at the moment about the Dubs is Dessie Farrell says they're in a period of transition, which I think we all understand. What's jumping out though is the form of the leaders, which isn't good.
Mm-hmm. No, that's it. Dublin need Brian Fenton to be Brian Fenton. They need Kieran Kilkenny. You see flashes still because he's an amazing footballer, but they need them to be even more impactful, to be more consistent through a full 70 minutes. And particularly Fenton, when you look at his record, he was untouchable for so long. And I in my view, the best midfielder I've ever seen play. And he's just been woefully out of form, last season and this season. And Dublin just need him to go back maybe to basics in some ways, being that physical presence around the middle of the field, catching kickouts, being aggressive, putting that athleticism that he has into action down there around that area of the field, winning breaks, driving the team forward. And I think it starts with him. And I think that turnaround is going to start with him. And when you add the fact that in many ways, the physical tone set by Dublin is often set by Small and McCarthy, and they really are missing James McCarthy in that regard.
A couple of other things jump out as well about the Dublin performance. Defensively, they look so vulnerable and so open, and I don't think any defender would look at that Dublin backline now and want to be there, because you are really left high and dry at times. And then at the other end of the pitch, attacking wise, I mean, it was again very average by the standards of old. I lost count of how many 50-50 balls were just lumped in high. Again, these are really new developments, and you're wondering how they're happening.
Yeah, it's very difficult to play in that Dublin full back line at the minute. And then when you understand that they're so used to playing in pitches like Croke Park and wide open spaces, and they know they have to be able to defend in those one-on-one situations. But really at times, the last day, David Byrne was on an island against somebody like Clifford, and Clifford was in rare form. Like, he was scoring points from out on the sideline, difficult conditions. His handling was spot on throughout. Not a whole lot you can do with him in a one-on-one situation when he's in that type of form, but he needs help. He needs players to get back in and around him. You had midfielders needed to get back there. Scully, when he was on the field, half forwards need to get back in, clog up that space, particularly when you were playing against the breeze. And I just think more so about the attack and play than when you talk about that. There was one particular situation at the end of, or in the second quarter, where they butchered a 2-on-1 with a really loose hand pass that went way beyond Dean Rock, and that sort of lack of precision was just remarkable. It was shocking to me, because you're so unused to seeing that from Dublin, that it's that lack of precision in that area, added to the fact that some of the younger players obviously not confident in this environment yet, and you have to give them time, and the decision making not being up to the normal standards.
Yeah. One other thing, this is a broader point and one we might chat about across the summer. So you might notice Evan Comerford is coming out of his goal for Kerry kickouts on Saturday, and this is a new thing, and in a sense I suppose he's standing there and putting his hands in the air almost to act as a deterrent, as in, if you kick it near me, bad things will happen. Now, I feel in media with GAA at the moment, we're all just so open to innovation and celebrating innovation. We're not calling out really bizarre tactics for what they are. I didn't understand why Kerry didn't go after Comerford in those situations. Point number one, he's not Brian Fenton. He's not a big man. He's very unlikely to beat one of your bigger players to the ball. And then secondly, if your man wins it above Comerford, he's in a bad position. Is he going to tackle you, in which case you pop it off and there's trouble? Is he going to suddenly turn around and sprint back to his goal, in which case what was the point of him coming out in the first place? And even if he gets possession, would you bank, if he was surrounded by opposition players, that he wouldn't give up a foul or foul the ball or do something silly with it? And you're kind of like, okay, if Comerford's going to come out, I would be saying to my goalkeeper, absolutely, let's take advantage of this. I mean, I don't know what Evan Comerford thinks is going to happen here, but let's sure as hell find out, and let's dictate that one or two of our bigger men are sprinting straight towards him, and let's land balls down him. I'm not seeing the point.
I completely agree with you, Joe. I don't see the point either. I in those situations when I'm watching that, I'm praying that the opposition goalkeeper puts the ball down on top of him to make the goalkeeper, whether it's Comerford, whether it's Niall Morgan or Rory Beggan in other situations, whether it's Tyrone or Monaghan. Now, the advantage they have is that they're bigger men and would appear to be more comfortable playing outfield than those goalkeepers that I've just mentioned. But at the same time, if you put the ball down on top of him, Comerford in this situation has to make a decision. Does he challenge for the ball? Is he good enough to win it clean if he challenges for it? If he doesn't win the ball, as you rightly pointed out, what's his next decision? Is he pressing and putting a tackle in, or is he scampering back to goals as quickly as he can? How does that affect the decision making of the defenders around him? Are they absolutely clear on what Evan Comerford is going to do should he find himself in a defensive situation with the ball in and around him? I think it creates indecision. I don't think it's of any use, because very often in these situations, when you see a goalkeeper out the field, you have an outfield player who's comfortable playing outfield, is kind of hovering around the penalty spot or around the 21, not having any impact on the game, when you're just there thinking, well, you'd be much better off putting pressure on the ball because you're a better athlete and you're more used to it, and the goalkeeper should be where the goalkeeper is. I find it baffling at times. I can totally understand why you use the goalkeeper when you're keeping possession. You kick the ball back to him, you keep them. I can understand when a goalkeeper might make himself available to take the ball for a switch play in the defensive half of the field and move the ball up the other side. I can understand if a goalkeeper comes running out to make an extra man to create to be useful in a 1-2 situation. But in that stuff where you're just playing a game of cat and mouse to literally block a space, I think it's the onus should be on the other team to make them make a decision and put pressure on them. And I would like to see opposition keepers, play a long ball down on top of them and see how they react.
Big time. Mayo next up for Dublin. If there is a consolation for Dublin, I suppose it's that this was a Dublin side shorn of some bigger names against a Kerry side close to full strength. What did you make of Kerry, though?
I thought Kerry were good. They were good, decent in those opening stages. I think they played to their strengths. They got the ball into their full forward line as quickly as they possibly could. Their strengths are Sean O'Shea, Clifford. Paddy Clifford did really well again, really busy all over the field. I thought Gainey, who had some difficult games in his last couple outings for Kerry, was as sharp as he's looked in a while. Dara Moynihan scored a great goal, kind of on a quick sideline ball that was taken on a quick attack down the field using the wind, and showed great confidence kicking in. But to me, the big difference was what they did around the middle of the field, maybe to what they had done previously in other games last season and even in the first round of the league. They were very, very physical around the middle of the field. I thought Jim O'Connor had a good game, got on a whole lot of ball, was decisive in his play on the ball, drove forward with it at times. And that's going to be big for Kerry because they have the forwards to win in All-Ireland. Have they got the aggression and the physicality around it and the mobility around the middle of the field to supply that dangerous attack with enough possession?
Yeah. So Dessie Farrell's into interesting territory now. Mayo come in, doesn't get any easier. They're currently 0 for 2. How he manages this really rocky period is going to be fascinating. Like there's talk of leaks in the camp increasingly. I personally haven't heard much, but you hear it being referenced, and maybe more of a porous atmosphere about what's happening or not happening at training. That comes with a health warning because I'm relaying that second hand, but you do hear that for sure more than ever. And just okay, he has to reimagine what Dublin are, but he also has to make sure everybody still is fully behind him and fully believes that he's the man to do it. That stuff can turn quickly in the world of GAA.
It sure can, and we're all hearing those rumours, and more often than not with those rumours there's not a whole lot of truth to them. I think the important thing for this Dublin squad, and that includes Dessie and everyone involved that's putting in their time and effort to trying to win another All-Ireland for Dublin, is that they have to get buy-in, and that starts with the leadership group, and it starts with Dessie communicating that message to the big players to get them playing better. If those big players start to play like we know they can, well then things will turn around quickly. Are they going to get back to the level they were a couple of years ago? Of course they're not, because they're just not as deep a squad as they were in terms of quality all over the field. But they still can be very dangerous. And I, for one, will be very late to the funeral of this Dublin team. I still think there's a whole lot they can achieve this summer. Dessie Farrell has a lot of experience. He's won 2 Leinster titles. He's won an All-Ireland. He's shown in the past that he can get big performances out of this team in the recent past. But to me, sometimes it comes down to, players are the ones that actually go out and do it on the pitch, and they need bigger performances from Fenton, from Kilkenny. They need McCarthy back. He's very much a leader for them. They need Conor O'Callaghan back. They need Cormac Costello back, because they look quite, I suppose, toothless up front without those 2 players in particular. Dean Rock has tried his best, but he really needs help in there to be even more effective, because he's a player that likes to play on the periphery, pick up scraps around, use that finishing power that he has. He's probably not always going to be the main target man, and he's at his best when he's working off other players. So if they can get that, of course, they're going to be dangerous again. But that's as much about Dessie mentally getting that group right. And in many ways, the Mayo game is the perfect game for them, because they know there's history with Mayo. Mayo beat them last year. They know how to beat Mayo in the National League in Croke Park. They've done that to really good effect over the last number of years. So I think it's the perfect fixture for them.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's kind of a fascinating story watching this great team and trying to figure out exactly where they are at the moment. Billy Joe Padden, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it, Billy Joe.